Welcome back to Hollywood. Latest reports. In a world where the lines between divinity and downfall often blur, two names have always stood tall in the Christian evangelism landscape: Billy Graham and Jimmy Swaggart. These two titans of the pulpit, each carrying the weight of a generation's faith, seem to live in different spiritual dimensions. One was known for his diplomatic, presidential connections and almost angelic reputation, Billy Graham. The other, equally powerful, yet often controversial, carried the fire and brimstone energy of old-time gospel, Jimmy Swaggart. But behind the headlines, the scandals and the millions of souls they touched, lies a hidden conversation. Billy Graham's final words to Jimmy Swaggart, never revealed publicly. Until now. The world remembers Billy Graham as the preacher to presidents, the man who filled stadiums with his message of love and salvation, whose humble posture never changed even when the entire world bowed before his wisdom. Jimmy Swaggart, on the other hand, stirred souls with his emotional sermons, healing songs, and charismatic presence. But when the televangelist world turned turbulent with scandals and betrayal, the spotlight on Swaggart became harsh and unforgiving. Yet deep in the shadows of that downfall, a quiet moment happened. A final, deeply spiritual encounter with Billy Graham that was never meant for camera. Those closest to both men have hinted at an emotional meeting, a phone call, and even letters exchanged between Graham and Swaggart near the end of Billy Graham's life. While the details remain shrouded in mystery for years, new sources, insiders who were part of their ministries, have come forward, and what they reveal is nothing short of jaw-dropping. Billy Graham, in his last days, reached out to Jimmy Swaggart not in condemnation, but in the lost encounter, when titans of faith whispered in private. The year was 2017. Billy Graham, already frail and nearing the end of his earthly journey, was said to be confined mostly to his home in Montreat, North Carolina. His days were quiet, filled with prayer, Bible reading, and select conversations with those he trusted most. But during one of those peaceful days, Billy Graham allegedly asked his personal assistant to place a private call, a call to Jimmy Swaggart in Baton Rouge. Many who knew Graham personally say he carried a burden in his final years, not one of regret, but of unfinished spiritual conversations. Jimmy Swaggart's name was one of them. Despite the media circus that followed Swaggart's fall from grace in the late 80s and early 90s, Graham never spoke a word of public condemnation. Privately, however, it's now clear he had something to say, and Swaggart needed to hear. Swaggart, now in his 80s, was reportedly stunned when his assistant informed him of the incoming call. According to one staff member at Family Worship Center, Brother Swaggart just froze. He didn't expect it. When he heard it was Billy Graham on the line, he sat down. There was silence, then tears. What followed, according to the source, was a 22-minute phone call that would leave Jimmy Swaggart visibly shaken. Not in guilt, but in awe of the grace extended toward him. "You were never alone, Jimmy." The conversation, as told by a close confidant of the Swaggart family, began with a long pause. Billy Graham's voice, faint yet filled with emotion, reportedly said, "Jimmy, I never stopped praying for you." Those 7 words shattered years of silence, suspicion, and separation. Swaggart, emotional and trembling, responded, "Brother Graham, I don't deserve your prayers." But Billy, ever the shepherd of broken spirits, didn't let that moment slip away. He reportedly said, "You were never outside the reach of God's mercy, or my heart." According to sources, Graham shared how he had followed Swaggart's ministry for years, admired his music, his preaching, and his deep burden for souls. He spoke not as a critic but as a brother, acknowledging the pain, the mistakes, and the isolation Swaggart had endured. But what he said next would leave a mark on Jimmy Swaggart's life for God with you. Billy Graham's most powerful message to Swaggart came when he allegedly whispered, "Jimmy, don't you ever believe your story is over? If God can use a murderer like Moses, a coward like Peter, and a doubter like Thomas, he can still use you. God's not finished with you." Those words, our sources claim, reignited something in Swaggart. "He wept like a child," said someone who witnessed the aftermath. Not because he felt ashamed, but because someone like Billy Graham still saw God's purpose. The world saw Graham as a man of poise and diplomacy, but that day, he was a spiritual father, extending a hand to a brother who had once been cast out. That call wasn't just encouragement, it was a passing of the torch, a spiritual handover that transcended denominations, reputations, and history. A secret letter found? After Billy Graham passed away in February 2018, a flurry of memorials erupted across the world. But one thing went unnoticed. A letter that Jimmy Swaggart allegedly received just weeks after the call. Kept private and sealed in Swaggart's personal Bible, This letter was reportedly read aloud during a closed-door session at family worship. Wrote, "Jimmy, in the twilight of my life, I look back and see men God used, not because they were perfect, but because they were willing. You have been willing, even in your brokenness. That is what heaven celebrates. Keep preaching, keep singing, keep reaching. The cross still stands." That phrase, "the cross still stands," became a quiet mantra that Swaggart would later echo in his sermons. Most listeners had no idea those words originated from the lips of Billy Graham himself. But for those who knew, it was a holy reminder that redemption is not for the perfect, but for the repentant. Swaggart's quiet tribute in one of his 2019 sermons, just a year after Graham's death, Jimmy Swaggart broke down in tears as he preached about forgiveness and restoration. Without naming names, he said, "There was a man, a great man of God, who reminded me that even in our darkest hour, Jesus never lets go. I'll never forget his voice, or his... It was subtle, but those who knew. He was talking about Billy Graham. That moment wasn't just about admiration, it was about closure. Two warriors of the faith, battle-scarred and weary, coming together in a final moment of truth. The world never saw it, but heaven surely did. Franklin Graham breaks silence recently. Franklin Graham, Billy's son and heir to the Graham evangelical mantle, made a stunning remark during an interview with a Christian radio station. When asked about the controversies in ministry and how his father viewed other preachers who faced public disgrace, Then he said, "Dad never judged men by their worst moment. He believed God could redeem anyone. I know for a fact he reached out to many, even those you wouldn't expect. That was Dad. Always restoring, never con..." The host asked if that included Jimmy Swaggart. Franklin simply smiled and said, "Especially." That moment sent shockwaves through the Christian community. Was this the confirmation everyone had waited for? Had Billy Graham, in his final days, taken it upon himself to personally reconcile with one of the most scandal-ridden evangelists of the 20th century? All signs. Why it was kept hidden, you may wonder. Why would such a powerful moment be kept from the public eye? The answer is simple. It wasn't about publicity. It was about Billy Graham never chased headlines. His heart was always aligned with God's mission, not man's applause. Reaching out to Swaggart wasn't a publicity stunt. It was a sacred duty. And Swaggart, deeply humbled, chose to carry that moment privately for as long as he could. But in today's world, where drama dominates and grace is in short supply, maybe now was the right time for this story to come out. Maybe the world needed to remember that true ministry isn't about never falling, it's about rising again and again because someone believed you